All right, so you guys asked for it. We're going deep on Carlos Ghosn today. We've got some excerpts from his Wikipedia page and some key points from another source. It's called Ghosn, Rise, Fall, and Escape. And let me tell you, this is one wild story.
It really is. Ghosn's story has it all. Ambition, success, controversy, even a bit of international intrigue.
Definitely. So let's start with the basics. Ghosn's career, just his career path, it's kind of mind-blowing. Michelin, Renault, Nissan. He even led two Fortune 500 companies, like, at the same time.
Simultaneously, yeah. Almost unheard of, really, leading two global giants like that. It's a high-pressure lifestyle, to say the least. But Ghosn was known for working relentlessly and his ability to deal with these really complex business situations.
And speaking of, navigating complex situations, I read that he was flying, like constantly flying. Over 150,000 nautical miles a year. That's like, what, circling the globe 6 times?
Yeah, something like that.
And on top of that, the guy is fluent in like Arabic, English, French, Portuguese. He even studied Japanese.
That fluency wasn't just, for show. It let him actually connect with employees across all these different cultures without needing translators, especially during those tough changes at Nissan. That direct communication was really important for trust.
Right, let's talk about those changes, those reforms. When he gets to Nissan 1999, the company's billions of dollars in debt. They're really struggling to even stay afloat. It was a pretty dire situation.
It was. Ghosn came in with this really bold plan. They called it the Nissan Revival Plan. It involved job cuts, plant closures, but he also went after those really deeply ingrained Japanese business practices, like the Keiretsu system.
Keiretsu. Now remind me what that is again.
Yeah, so Keiretsu is basically this network of companies with these interlocking business relationships and shareholdings. Ghosn, he streamlined operations, pushed for efficiency. He wasn't afraid to shake things up.
He wasn't afraid to shake things up already. He changed Nissan's official language to English. That took some serious guts.
Bold move, no question. Streamlined global communication, yeah, but some people felt like it was, pushing out longtime Japanese employees. Like, There's always a trade-off when you're trying to change a company's culture that much, that quickly.
It's amazing how one decision can have so many consequences. And during all this, he got the nickname Le Cost Killer.
Which pretty much sums up his approach, right? Laser-focused on cutting costs, on efficiency, and to be fair, it worked. Nissan went from almost bankrupt to, a major player in the auto industry globally.
Now, Ghosn was also ahead of the curve on electric vehicles, like way ahead. He was talking about EVs back in 2007.
And what's really interesting is he didn't see electric vehicles just as a trend. He saw them as, necessary, especially for developing countries. Under his leadership, that Renault-Nissan alliance, they became a world leader in EVs, even outsold Tesla for a while.
Yeah, I found this quote where he says, if you're going to let developing countries have as many cars as they want, there's absolutely no alternative but to go for zero emissions. Pretty remarkable foresight back then.
He understood that demand for personal transportation was growing, especially in emerging markets, right? And electric vehicles were the key to making that growth sustainable. Years before, most car companies took EVs seriously.
But this story takes a pretty sharp turn. In 2018, Ghosn is arrested in Japan on charges of financial misconduct. Just a really shocking turn of events.
It was, and those allegations, they were serious. Underreporting his income, misusing company funds, even things like shifting his own investment losses onto Nissan.
And then things get even more complex because the Japanese legal system has this thing called, hostage justice?
Hostage justice, yeah. It's a tactic where suspects are held for a long time, often in solitary, and the hope is that they'll just break under the pressure and confess, even if they're innocent. It's been criticized a lot by international human rights groups.
So was he a corporate criminal or the victim of a system that was, designed to force a confession? It's a question that's divided people ever since.
It has. To really understand this case, we need to get into the specifics of those accusations against Ghosn and the evidence that both sides presented. Back again with our deep dive into Carlos Ghosn.
Okay, so before we get to that escape, that crazy escape, let's break down the allegations against him. What exactly was he accused of?
Well, there were multiple accusations against Ghosn. First, there was the issue of underreporting his income. See, Japanese law says that executives have to disclose their full compensation, their whole pay. And Nissan claimed that Ghosn had underreported tens of millions of dollars over several years.
Yeah, I remember reading about these complicated deferred payment plans. It was like something out of a movie, a financial thriller or something.
It really did, didn't it? The allegations were that Ghosn, along with his close aide, Greg Kelly, they put together these deferred payment plans that weren't fully disclosed in Nissan's financial reports. And this violated Japan's Financial Instruments and Exchange Act.
So it wasn't just the amount, but how it was, like, hidden.
Right. Transparency is really important. It's key in financial reporting. And Nissan claimed that Ghosn purposely obscured, hid his true compensation.
And then there was the accusation of misusing company funds, right?
Yes, Nissan alleged that Ghosn was using company money for personal things, lavish vacations, real estate purchases, even funding for ventures that his family was involved in.
I remember that detail about all the different places he had houses. I mean, Rio, Beirut, Paris, Amsterdam.
Yeah.
That's quite a lifestyle.
It definitely sounded lavish. The question was whether those expenses were really legitimate business costs or just him using company money for personal indulgences.
Then there was that whole thing about shifting personal investment losses to Nissan. What was going on with that?
That was a really serious allegation. So Nissan claimed that back in 2008, during the financial crisis, Ghosn transferred personal losses from a derivatives trade, which is basically a really complex financial bet. He transferred those losses onto the company's books. Basically, they were saying that he used Nissan to bail him out of a bad investment.
And that involved that Saudi Arabian businessman, right? You Sheikh Khalid al-Jufali.
Correct. It all revolved around payments that Nissan had made to a company owned by Jufali. And Nissan claimed those payments were kickbacks for Ghosn getting a personal line of credit from Jufali during that financial crisis.
So, I mean, if these things were true, it's a major breach of trust. Did Ghosn did he defend himself?
He did. Ghosn denied all the allegations very strongly, said it was a conspiracy to push him out of Nissan and prevent a merger with Renault. His argument was that the deferred compensation was never, officially finalized, and that the payments to Jufali were legitimate business expenses for keeping Nissan going in the Middle East.
So it's kind of a he said, she said situation. What kind of proof did each side have to back up their claims?
Well, Nissan's side, they presented internal documents, emails, financial records, and said this proved Ghosn was in the wrong. They also pointed out that Ghosn had a lot of control over the company's finances and had gone around internal controls to authorize some of those payments.
And Ghosn's defense, what did they say to that?
They said that the evidence was being twisted, that Nissan was misrepresenting things, that Ghosn had never even received the deferred compensation. And they said that the payments to Jufali had been approved by other executives at Nissan.
So it sounds like two very different interpretations of the same events. How did the Japanese legal system, how did they handle this whole thing?
And that's where things get even more interesting. The Japanese legal system is known for, these really long pretrial detention periods, and they have a very high conviction rate.
Yeah, you mentioned that hostage justice system before.
Exactly. Ghosn was held for over 100 days, a lot of that in solitary, before he was even granted bail. And his lawyers, they said over and over that he wasn't getting a fair trial, that the system was biased against him.
And it's ultimately what led him to flee the country.
Seems that way. Ghosn felt like he was trapped, that he would never get a fair hearing in Japan. So he took things into his own hands, came up with this very daring, very bold escape plan, made headlines around the world.
Back for the final part of our Carlos Ghosn deep dive.
It's been a wild ride, right? This whole story, it almost feels like a movie.
It really does. We've covered his rise to the top, that shocking fall from grace with all those accusations, and now we got to talk about the escape.
Yeah, it's hard to believe it even happened. You have this powerful executive facing serious charges, and he just vanishes out of Japan undetected. How is that even possible? Well, some details are still kind of unclear, but we know it involved a private jet, a musical equipment box, like a big one, big enough to hide in, and a network of people helping him every step of the way. He went from his apartment in Tokyo to a bullet train to a hotel in Osaka, and then onto that plane to Lebanon.
It sounds so risky. I mean, what must have been going through his mind? What did he have to gain by escaping like that?
Ghosn has always said he's innocent, right? Claimed he was the victim of a conspiracy. He felt like he couldn't get a fair trial in Japan with that, that hostage justice system we talked about and the high conviction rate. He thought going to Lebanon, which doesn't have an extradition treaty with Japan, was his only way to clear his name.
So he gets to Lebanon. He's free from Japanese custody, but not exactly free from the controversy. What happened after that?
Well, he had this press conference, right? And he was just proclaiming his innocence, accusing Nissan executives of plotting against him, criticizing the Japanese legal system. It was dramatic. It really captured the world's attention.
What about the legal fallout, though? I mean, he might have escaped Japan, but there were still those investigations in other countries, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Renault, they were under pressure from the French government, so they started their own investigation into Ghosn's finances. And they found evidence of questionable spending and the possibility of misusing company funds.
Yes.
He even ended up settling with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission over charges of not disclosing over $140 million in pay from Nissan.
So even though he got away, literally escaped,
Yeah.
the legal battles,
Yeah.
they didn't stop. Where does that leave him today?
He's still in Lebanon, can't travel freely because France has that international arrest warrant out for him. His career as a top business leader, it's pretty much over. And his legacy, well, it's forever tied to these scandals.
It's a complex legacy, for
Yeah.
sure. On the one hand, he saved Nissan. He was a visionary, and he saw the potential of electric vehicles before almost anyone else. But then there's these accusations of serious financial wrongdoing,
Yeah.
and these drastic measures to avoid accountability. It's hard to reconcile both sides of the story.
I agree. I think what Ghosn's story really shows us is, the dangers of ambition without limits and how important ethical leadership is, especially in the business world. It also makes you think about the challenges of dealing with different legal systems and different cultures in a global economy.
This has been a fascinating deep dive, and honestly, it's a story with so many twists and turns you couldn't make it up. What do you think about all this, listener? What's going to stick with you from the Carlos Ghosn saga? And remember, we've just scratched the surface. There are books out there, documentaries, tons of articles if you want to keep digging. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.